Emmanuel Jean-Michel Frédéric Macron was born on December 21, 1977, in Amiens, a quiet town in northern France. His parents were both doctors, his father a neurologist, his mother a physician. They raised him in a household of intellect, discipline, and high expectations. From a young age, Macron stood out. He read constantly, often well beyond his years. He once told Brigitte, "Whatever you do, I will marry you." Years later, he kept that promise. Philosophy fascinated him more than playground games. He wasn't loud or athletic, but he had an intense presence and a mind always questioning. At school, Emmanuel encountered someone who would change his life forever: his drama teacher, Brigitte Auzier. She was 24 years older, married, and a mother of 3. He was just 15. Yet, between them grew a connection no one understood and many disapproved of. He wanted to liberalize France's rigid labor laws and make its economy more competitive. But these reforms came at a price. Many in his own party saw him as a traitor to the left. Their relationship, controversial and unconventional, would go on to be one of the most public and analyzed love stories in global politics. He had no traditional party, no elected experience, and no political base, one that transcended left and right. He took to the streets, held town halls, shook hands in small villages. He listened, he debated, he inspired. He studied philosophy, then political science at Sciences Po, and finally graduated from the École Nationale d'Administration, France's elite training ground for future leaders. Marine Le Pen, leader of the far-right National Front, emerged as his primary opponent. His parents were alarmed. They sent him to Paris to finish his studies, hoping the distance would dissolve the bond, but Macron was resolute. To calm the unrest, he launched a grand national debate, allowing citizens to voice their concerns across the country. Macron represented globalization, progress, and the European Union. Sparked by a fuel tax, the movement quickly expanded into a nationwide outcry against inequality and elitism. Hospitals overflowed, cities shut down, and the economy trembled. Macron's popularity had waned, and far-right sentiments had grown. Still, he managed to win, becoming the first French president in 20 years to be re-elected. Macron's leadership was tested like never before. He enforced strict lockdowns, rolled out vaccine mandates, and expanded economic aid. Protesters saw Macron as a president of the rich, disconnected from the struggles of ordinary citizens. Macron proposed raising the retirement age from 62 to 64. He stood firm on climate change, tech regulation, and strategic autonomy from the US and China. She attended every major event by his side. Though constantly scrutinized by the media, their partnership appeared resilient, affectionate, and deeply bonded. He argued it was necessary to protect the system's future. He sees himself as a thinker, a problem solver, and, above all, a man on a mission to reshape France for the 21st century. The French people, however, erupted in protest once again. Strikes swept the country. Demonstrations blocked cities. To some, he is the embodiment of technocratic elitism. To others, he is the rare leader with the courage to act, even when it's unpopular. At 39 years old, he became the youngest president of France since Napoleon. He stood triumphantly before the Louvre, with Beethoven's Ode to Joy playing in the background, the anthem of the European Union. It was more than a victory, it was a message to the world. While the war still erupted, Macron positioned himself as a mediator, someone who would keep the door open for dialogue while firmly supporting Ukraine's sovereignty. Le Pen stood for nationalism, protectionism, and closing borders. The country was at a crossroads. In 2008, he joined Rothschild & Co., one of the most powerful investment banks in Europe. Within just a few years, he negotiated a multi-billion-euro deal between Nestlé and Pfizer. He became a millionaire in his early 30s. Brigitte eventually divorced her husband. In 2007, Emmanuel and Brigitte got married. Internationally, he emerged as a defender of liberal democracy and European unity. In 2012, he left the private sector to join the government as Deputy Secretary General under President François Hollande. 2 years later, he was promoted to Minister of the Economy. While the world was fascinated by his personal life, Macron built a sharp academic and professional resume. Instead of going directly into politics, Macron chose finance, but money wasn't his goal. Reform was. In government, Macron pushed a centrist, pro-business agenda that broke with traditional socialist ideals. By 2016, Macron made a radical move. He resigned and announced the creation of his own political movement En Marche, meaning forward, in French. Still, Macron believed France was ready for a new kind of politics. In the 2017 presidential election, the political landscape collapsed. The traditional left and right candidates faded. It was a tense and polarized campaign. On May 7, 2017, Emmanuel Macron won the presidency with over 66% of the vote. Macron entered office with energy and ambition. He began reforming France's labor code, cutting corporate taxes and modernizing the state. But his domestic reforms were not without backlash. By late 2018, the Yellow Vest protests erupted across France. The demonstrations were large, chaotic, and sometimes violent. Macron's approval ratings plummeted. Though it helped ease tensions, the scars remained. The reformer was now also a target. Then came COVID-19. The pandemic hit France hard. While controversial at times, his pandemic response stabilized France. His approval began to recover, and yet, the social fabric remained strained. In 2022, Macron ran for re-election. Once again, his opponent was Marine Le Pen, but this time, the race was closer. His second term began with another challenge: pension reform. His critics saw him as stubborn and disconnected. Supporters saw a leader willing to make tough, unpopular decisions for long-term gain. Beyond France, Macron became a key voice in global affairs. He advocated for a stronger, more independent Europe. In early 2022, he made headlines for his diplomatic visits to Russia in an attempt to prevent the invasion of Ukraine. He also worked to deepen relations with African nations, reform NATO's strategy, and promote European innovation in technology and defense. Throughout it all, Macron's relationship with Brigitte remained rock solid. Macron is known for working long hours, reading voraciously, and quoting philosophy even in political speeches. But his leadership style, efficient, top-down, and often aloof, has earned him as many critics as admirers. As of 2025, Macron stands halfway through his second term. His legacy is still being written. Will he be remembered as the reformer who prepared France for the future, or as the president who ignored the voice of the streets? Was he a visionary ahead of his time, or a modern monarch surrounded by walls of power? Time will answer these questions. But what's undeniable is that Emmanuel Macron's story, from a teenager in love with his teacher to the highest office in France, is one of bold choices, intellectual fire, and relentless ambition. He didn't follow the rules, he rewrote them.